Hi everyone. I guess you're always wondering about where I come from and where have I been in my life before I became an entertainer. Well, as far as I know is that my mom's Edith Davis, maiden name, my dad Chester, and how they met, we haven't have an idea how they met, but they met. They had 7 of us. A few of us was born in Brooklyn, New York, Ralph Avenue, Brooklyn, New York. And then we all kind of just packed up and we all moved to Newark, New Jersey. And that's where it all began. That's where it all began. In Newark, Mulberry Street, which we call Chinatown. You know, we had a mixture of everyone. Yeah, a mixture of everyone. We went to Lafayette Street School, and we had everybody there. If you're from Europe, we had them. In my school, we had everyone. Portuguese, Chinese, Czechoslovakians, Germans, Irish, Italians, blacks, Filipinos. I mean, any place in Europe, fly, you can pick them up from our playground at the end of the day. It's very hard to say what times were back in them days in Newark, New Jersey. You know, I used to do a lot of things. I wasn't school material. My reading was, well, I could read. My writing was, I could write. My spelling was, I could spell. But the only thing that I was a dreamer. I'd be looking out the window, wondering what's going on in this world. And I used to get into trouble. But when I used to get into trouble, now dig this, now you check this out. When I used to get into trouble, the teacher would send me out of the classroom. And I would go downstairs to the principal. And the principal, in them times, Mr. Knopf, Mr. King, first principal had Mr. King, Lafayette Street School. Then we had Mr. Knopf, and now Mr. Knopf was cool. He had a big Eldorado car, really, really smart. Came to school, but when I used to go down to him, he used to take me in the smoking teacher's room, and he says, "What's up with you, Jerome? Come in." So he set me down, and I used to sing Nat King Cole to him. So basically, I would probably get into trouble so I can go down and see Mr. Knopf. He'd have a break and have a cigarette, and I would be singing to him and having a good time. But them days were kind of, I had my sisters and brothers. I had Maurice, Laura Steen, Levon, Gloria, Carol, Tony, and Jerome, myself. And we all went to that same school, along with the Italian boys, and I don't know how to say to you, we weren't rich and we weren't poor. The enrichedness was that my mom's raised us on her own. Of course, my mom and dad, they broke up, and we never asked what happened between that because it wasn't our business. We took care of moms and she took care of us, and I went out shoe shining, and on Saturdays I used to wash cars, and I used to work for a Chinese restaurant. So I used to go to a Chinese restaurant and the Ding Ho restaurant and wash dishes. And then on Saturdays I'd make enough money to take all of us to the movies, the Rialto Theater. But I guess, that's life. That's life. My mom, Edith Davis, was my rock. She was absolutely wonderful, and she still is. At 94 years old, she still is. I don't know what to say, how I got into show business, how I got into singing. I guess I was always messing about, singing on street corners with the Italian boys. We used to, at Lafayette Street School, we used to sing out and do the Del Vikings, stuff like dum 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 ba doo be dum 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 dum. Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers. Well, you found someone who broke your back on your heel. Goody goody. We used to sing all these songs on the street corner, and all the time. You're like in England, you had bobbies, but the police would come by, and they'd be walking police, right? And we'd be singing, and it'd be about 8 o'clock, and by that time, you know, you had to be in the house. And I was a long way from my home because I had to go back to Mulberry Street, and then maybe 4 or 5 blocks, you know, with my little brown black legs. I should haul ass to get home at night because maybe I get mugged or something like that. But that wasn't the case. You never got mugged. Never bothered you because everybody knew everybody. But the police used to come by. The Bobby used to come by, or what do you say, Bobby? He used to come by. He says, "You lads should be home, and you ought to see everybody. You one going one way, one went another way, one went this way, one way that, and I went the other way, going back home to Mulberry Street." But I don't know. It wasn't a hard life. It wasn't a hard life. You know, we I guess, like in England, you know, we made food go a long way. You know, we have ham, and we made ham sandwiches 3 days a week. You know, take it to school for lunchtime. You know, if we had turkey or, you know, chicken, we make chicken sandwiches. You know, for the week, whatever. You know, because we didn't have enough money to buy lunch in school. And lunch back in them days, if you had a lunch was 25 cents for a full meal, hot lunch. You know. Sometimes some of the kids didn't like the lunch, so we traded our sandwiches for lunch. To have said, "Jerome, what are you doing in his life now? You didn't pay for yours." "Well, I traded with such and such, and because he didn't like the food," something like that. Well, it went down. But that went on for years, and that went on for years. And when I didn't go to high school. 2 years in high school when I graduated. I graduated in 1979. No, 1957. 1957. No, was it? What? I'm getting old. I forgot when I graduated. Yeah, 1957. I graduated grammar school. Then I went to high school. I only stayed 2 years. But then I said, well, my mother's got enough problems. And maybe some of you guys out there or some of you lads out there would understand this. She's got enough problems. You know. So I said, I'm going to just leave home. Not leave home, but I bought some bongo drums, and I headed to Hoboken. That's where you got the tram into New York. And I started at 15 years old. I started going to New York. And I guess I found my gift there, because I got into Greenwich Village, and when I got into Greenwich Village, that was a whole new ball game for me, a whole open doors. There were coffee houses all over. You had the Cafe War, you had the Cafe Bazaar, you had the Bitter End, you know, and I had my bongos and just walked in and started messing about with other musicians, not knowing who they were at the time. You know, started washing dishes at the Cafe War. Started washing dishes. Learned a few chords on the guitar. Learned a few chords, you know, G, C, D, A, and just Bob Dylan songs, and just listening to what it was doing. Joan Baez, Joni Mitchell. And, you know, became entertainer. So I started singing, entertaining, playing my music, playing my 4 chords, singing stuff like Kumbaya, my Lord, Kumbaya, my Lord, Kumbaya. Kumbaya, my Lord, Kumbaya. Folk songs, you know. Then you learned a few Dylan songs back in them days. Tom Paxton, you know. But the main thing is I'm talking about is simply me. A friend of mine told me about just say simply me. This is simply me. Like I said, washing dishes, learning a few chords, and singing Bob Dylan songs, and a little bit just folklore music. Place in them days were packed, you know, and people came from all over New York, out of town. Still? Yeah, still. It's just, The guitar is still talking to me as I'm talking. So maybe he wants to say something to you. But as I was saying, it's very hard to determine that when you have a gift. So I'm saying this is that I had a gift, a God-given gift of playing music. However, 3 chords, 4 chords, 5 chords, I entertained people in Greenwich Village, New York. Places packed. You get up and you sing something like 500 miles or something like Gumbaya or something like Leadbelly, Pickabella Cotton, you know, something that kept you going. Then when I got off stage, I'd take off my jacket, go back in the kitchen, wash dishes. You know, wash dishes, do something. But in them days, it was good times for me. I had good times. So I used to take my drums, take my bongo drums, and I walked into, we should go to, give you for instance, when I finished washing dishes and I did my set, I go to another coffee house called the Cafe Bazaar. And on stage one night, I walked in there with my bongo drums. I just got a pair of bongo drums, you know. And there's a lad was sitting on the stage playing his guitar. And I just walked in and I said, "Hey, listen, could I sit in with you?" And he says, "Okay, come on up." And then I saw, when I walked around to walk up the steps to get onto the stage and put a chair and put my bongos between my legs to play, he had a dog there. And I said, "Oh, this gentleman is blind." And it happened to be a good friend of mine now, today, Jose Feliciano. And I started playing my bongos with him, and every time he was on stage, I got up and played with him, played sets with him. And at the time, he was just a lad from Avenue A, side of Greenwich Village, Lower East Side, you know, Spanish, you know, Puerto Ricano, you know, but a lovely, lovely, lovely man, you know, lovely, lovely person. And he said, do that, and then finish that gig and thank him, and you know, you made a few pence, a few dollars and stuff like that. And I run back to the Cafe Wa, you know, and then do a set there. But we used to have a thing where if you're going to go on stage, you know, people had carte blanche. Bill Cosby, you know, he started there. He would go on first. Richard Pryor came a little later. He would go on. You know, all the main stars like them coming up, you know. Peter, Paul, and Mary. Noel Stookie from Peter, Paul, and Mary, the tall one. He was a school teacher from Brooklyn, and he was a comedian, actually. He sat on the stool. It was a comedian way before he met Peter and you know, and Mary, you know. But they got together, and they became lovely people, lovely, lovely, lovely group. You know, Puff the Magic Dragon, you know, for the folklore days. And the greatest thing about that is that here I am among these people who are Mecco stars today. So I just said, well, you know, I didn't have an agent, you know, so I just took potluck and I played my guitar and I did this, I did that. And then I met some lads who played steel drums, Calypso steel drums. His name is Victor Brady. He's from St. Croix in the Virgin Islands. And me playing my bongos and him playing steel drums, playing all drums. And he had a young lady named Terry Malone. And she was shaking maracas and great, great, great singer. So I started playing with Victor while he was playing his steel drums. Beautiful player. Great, we call it in the West Indies, pan, great pan, a beautiful pan player. You know, he can play Bach, he can play little Bach on a tenor pan. He can play Bach, he can play any kind of thing you want, you know. But I played bongos, and I stayed behind and played bongos behind him. And we had an idea of calling ourselves the Calypso Kids. Well, I said, okay, fine. So we got a great shirts and colorful shirts, and we went on Cafe Watch stage, the Calypso Kids. But back in them days, we went on, and then in the back by the kitchen where I used to wash dishes, they had like what do you call these seats? Like a row of seats where, let's say, an artist, let's say an artist, a guitar player would go on, a drummer would get ready to play, but only had 10 of them, and they would come. And these were potential stars today. People I'm going to name are stars today. Paul, who's my man, buddy over here, who's videoing me, and my life thing here, and telling you good people out there. But the guitar keeps on wanting to get in the picture by singing to me. So I guess I've had this guitar, going on now, I would say, I'm going back 1969, 69. And we'll tell you about that, And I got this in Vermont, with another good friend. We'll get to that. We'll get to that. And we'll just set it down there so it won't sing back to me. Now, you behave now when I'm talking to these great, lovely people out there. Going back to simply me, the gift I had that the Lord gave me of playing music, I was always going to be an entertainer. Probably no good for school, but this guitar next to me has taken me to unbelievable places. And I started playing again at the Cafe Wild, Calypso, and somebody said to me, they had one of these big, the first American World's Fair in New York. I played at the Latin Pavilion, and great stars like Joe Cuba. These are big Latin bands, the greats. Ray Barretta, Tito Puente, Tito Rodriguez, these are great, and I was doing Calypso. But the greatest thing that show you what talent, that God-given talent that I had, is that somebody came up with an idea. They said, well, we're the Calypso kids. They're doing a big festival in New York, and every Trinidadian, Barbadian, Jamaicans, wherever, they had a limbo dancer. And me, from Newark, New Jersey, Brooklyn to Newark, New Jersey, and raised in Newark, what do I know about Calypso? Limbo dancing, I'm not, maybe in the past, my father came out of Haiti and came into Georgia, and then right on into New York, and I met my moms, and that happened. But make a long story short, I said, okay, I'll give it a go. Well, my little skinny black legs, 6 inches, 6 3/4 inches under the bar, and I beat everyone. And here I am from Newark, New Jersey, in a limbo contest, won it, and I became the Guinness Book of Records, the best limbo dancer in the world. And I'm saying, well, what does that take me? They gave me a trophy. I got the trophy, and still back at the Cafe Wild, everybody praising you. And people used to come from all over, like I said. The girls used to come into Greenwich Village, right? The Bohemians, beatniks. Oh, just to see the beatniks. And Richard Pryor said one day, we had a tour bus that used to come into New York, and all the tourists would be on it, from Minneapolis and Canada. You just come in to see the Bohemians, the beatniks, to see the coffee houses, the Gaslight, and whoever was playing there. But they used to come by to see we're art and we're hippies and whatever. And Richard Pryor used to come on stage and say, man, that bus that comes through here, coming through here with all these tourists, and people looking at us said, oh, look at that beatnik. Oh, look at that beatnik. And oh, look at that hippie, And he said, oh, look at a white girl with the colored guy. And the man turned around and said, hey, man, stop the bus. That's my daughter. And everybody would crack up. He was that clever. God rest his soul. He was that and Cosby, Metro, situation comedy. Cosby was the best. Richard Pryor was absolutely, I loved him. We all loved him, because he came out with some fantastic things. God rest his soul. He was magic, Got to know him. And basically, then I just started just kept on playing, kept on playing. And I used to go to a place, and upstairs from the Cafe Wa was a theater where they had Little Mary Sunshine. It was a play. And also, the first actor, they did a play called The Zulu and the Zeta. And the gentleman in Officer and the Gentleman, Lou Gossett Jr., he became a very good friend of mine because he was the first black who was doing that play by Arthur Lugoff. The play was by Arthur Lugoff in New York. You know, and it's amazing how you get to meet these people coming up, you know, stars like them. I mean, you know, if it wasn't for Greenwich Village, I would be sitting here with Paul, who's filming me, and kind of like my saying to you that you don't have to be a star. If you're in music or if you're in any type of entertainment, find a place where and move on with it. Because if it's a gift, and you don't have enough money to go to a music school to enhance that gift, then you have to take it as it comes. And that's how I did it. I took it as it come every day. And the only reason why I started to go uptown in like Fifth Avenue, Park Avenue, where the little more money was. I met a lad who worked at a place called Brandy's. His name was Bobby Hep, who wrote Sonny, you know, and we became friends. And he asked me, could I do a gig one night while he was going back and forth to Boston, Massachusetts, playing places up there, and he couldn't do a night. And I said, yeah, you know, I could come uptown and play, you know. And I went uptown and I started playing, and I never looked back. And, you know, it just went from one thing to another. And then I worked in a place called the African Room, you know, because of my limbo dancing, I got jobs uptown, you know, on 42nd Street, 44th Street, and Broadway, you know. And I got to know other artists there. I mean, one of the greatest artists, Lulu sings one of their songs that they wrote, called "You Make Me Wanna Shout, Throw My Hands Up." You know, Joey D and the Starliners. Joey D used to play the wagon wheel around the corner from the African Room where I was doing my limbo dancing and doing my African music. And I mean, it's just funny old world. You leave Newark and you come into Greenwich Village, and that gift, that God-given gift of being an entertainer, wanting to entertain people, it just flows, you know, like a river. It just flows, you know. And you got to stay away from the, you know, I stayed away from the dope and the cocaine and the smoke. Okay, I had my rum and cokes and I had my drinks and stuff like that, but stayed away from the main thing. And it was there. If it was there, it was there, you know. But you didn't have to deal with it, and you stay away from it, you know. So, which I did. But when I went uptown, and I used to play in the African Room, and I used to go around the corner. To the bring my drums around the corner to the wagon wheel, and I used to go into the wagon wheel, and Joey Vinny, you know, one of Joey D's musicians playing with him. Oh, I think they were cousins or whatever. I used to get on stage and play with them, you know, and get on stage and play with them. You know, you make me want to shout, throw my hands up and shout, you know. And when I tell people this, people say, well, oh, you're dropping names. You know, when you're coming up in show business, you know, you're going to meet people. And when you meet them, and say 10 years, 20 years later, you say that to someone, they say, well, you're bringing up names. You know, don't worry about them. Because you know that you've been there and you've done that, and they became your friends. So going back to simply me, is that I stayed and played, and then from Brandy's and the African Room, I used to go to Brandy's, and from there, take my guitar, go up to Boston, Massachusetts. Now that's another venture. Boston, Massachusetts, Cape Cod, Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard, you know. Play out there. You meet James Taylor, a folk singer at the time. And I did a show with his brother, Alex Taylor, who was played rock and roll music. This is up in Vermont. Excuse me, in Cape Cod. And I used to go to Martha's Vineyard, play down there, sing, and get to know people, folk songs again, playing folk songs and carrying on, and you know, and you just became. Go to Burlington, Vermont. When I went to Burlington, Vermont, I met another great blues player, big, tall lad, Luther Allison. That was his name, Luther Allison. 6 foot something, and great guy. Bought my drums and played with him. You know, it's hard to say, where you've been in this world, And I've always taken care of myself. 10-wheel drive. Used to travel down to Virginia, leaving New York, going to Virginia, going to Hollins College, an all-girls school, and the main group there was mamas and papas. Mamas and papas were playing in the main hall, and I was in the canteen with a couple of other musicians. Just traveling on. Toronto, back in the old days, the Penny Fartham. Anybody out there remember the Penny Fartham in Toronto? And that's Bruce Springsteen's played there many years ago. Now he's doing a lot of rock. They call him the boss. And back in the folk days, he was singing a lot of folk songs, lots of good things. And you meet these people just by glance or being at the right place at the right time. And they become acquaintances of yours. But you carry on. I carried on playing. Sugar Bush, Glen Ellen, Mad River, after ski, play my folk songs, just traveling around. But the greatest thing I found by playing my folk music, I found myself in Canada. I found myself in Montreal, where I played for meeting many people like in old Montreal, meeting people like Leonard Cohen, sitting right next to me, and we're talking, and just everyday people. But I'm a musician, and I'm traveling. For once, I'm never going to get a pension. 2, I'm always going to travel around the world and do what I want to do. But respectfully, meeting other people and going to other countries. Take for instance, the first time I've ever been in Europe, ever. I was singing at the Brandy's one night, and place was packed, and Bobby Hepp, he was in Boston at the time, and some gentleman approached me and says, "Oh, you're very good." And I said, "Well, thank you very much." He said, "Have you ever been to Amsterdam?" I said, "Amsterdam?" So no, I haven't been to Amsterdam. I was in Paris on my own at one time, a long time before that. So I went to, they text me and got a ticket, went to Amsterdam, and went to Hotel Pulitzer in Amsterdam. And I played there, sang, did my limbo dancing, met other artists over there, did a big jazz thing in Amsterdam. And Liza played at a friend of mine's place called Maxime's. This is a piano bar. And you sit at the piano bar, and there's Antonio Fargas from Huggy Bear. He's sitting there having a drink, and I'm chatting with him. When's his next episode and things like that. And a gentleman came up to me and said to me, "Have you ever been to, I like the way you sing." He said, "Si habla español." I said, "No habla español." I said, "Have you ever been to Mallorca?" I said, "Mallorca?" Yeah. I know where Puerto Rico is, because most Americans, New York City, we go to Puerto Rico or the Virgin Islands. That's our stop. I didn't know that, so I don't know where. So they text me the next day, they text me the next week, and found myself in Palma, Mallorca, at a 5-star hotel in Plaza Gamilla, the Victoria Soul Hotel, and I'm there, and I'm playing my jazz, strumming my own guitar, my own, being simply me, and like Paul says, simply me, just playing and doing my thing. And I'm singing one night, and there's a lady by the name of Lady Ducker was there. Then I met some people, some other artists that were there, and from there, I met some people that playing one night, and I said, somebody said to me, this lady was down at the end and saying, "What do you want to?" I said, "What are you doing?" "Oh, nothing." And so I just said, "Okay, nothing. You're coming with me." And I found myself after all these years, after playing all over Canada, Europe, meeting these people, and just country to country, guitar playing, and just so I can just survive and survive well, and not to put a lot of burden on my mom back home. I did it. And I met this lady, and I said, "Okay, you're coming with me." And for 31 years I've been, my first time ever in England, other than being in London way before that, up north. So she lives in Bolton. So I came over and did some shows here. Came over, and I had no place to go. Living. We married. Family was great. Great family, great people in the Northwest. Absolutely great. And one day I was going over to Granada. Because they were doing some auditioning, and I didn't have a gig at the time here in this country. I mean, I could have gone back to New York City, and I had to get off the plane, and I was working. Could have gone back to Montreal, get off the plane, I was working. But, being married, and so I said, okay, fine, I'll just travel in. The nearest city was Manchester. I didn't realize it then. And I got into a place called the Brown Bull. I walked in the Brown Bull and had a beer. And the gentleman asked me, "You play the guitar?" And I said, "Well, I play at it, and And he said to me, "Would you like to do a show?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd like to do a show." And he says, went back and told the missus, and I said, "I think I got a gig." And it was the fairground people. They went down to Nottingham, and they bused me down to Nottingham, and I did a show with them. I did a show for them, and that was my foot in the door. When I got back into Manchester, I stopped at Midland Hotel, and they let me off. And I said, well, to the cab driver, I said, where's the live music around? Being from New York, I was ready to go home yet, because I was going to I can call my Jeanette and say, pick me up wherever I am. And she would do, being a lady that she is, she would pick me up, because I had no wheels then. I had my only 2 feet. So I went over to a place called Band on the Wall, and on Swan Street. I went in there, and the place was jumping, And I'm sitting at the bar, and obviously nobody's recognized I'm an outsider, because they were soul brothers there. The place was hopping and having rhythm and blues, and had some reggae on, and we're having a great time. And I started chatting with this gentleman. I said his name was Vaughn, and got to talking to him, and a great guy. He took me next door to a place called the Smithfield. And man, what wonderful times I had. Got into Smithfield, and I never looked back. The greatest thing in the world is never looking back and being sorry. Ever. You look back and say, I'm not sorry, but there were some good times and hard times, but never be sorry for them, because you've arrived, and you've arrived in good time with good people in the Northwest. So I started playing, and then when I started playing, the first gig I had was another gig I had. I went to H&W Audio in Bolton, and I rented some equipment. I went to the Smithfield, and I started playing, and had various musicians playing with me, because I was very unorthodox with my 12-string guitar playing. But I met so many people that came through. People now today say to me, "Oh, you still playing that Smithfield?" And I played, and then I did the Playboy Club. Then I went to a place on my break. I went to a place, this is funny. This is funny for you lovely people in the Northwest. And a young lad came up to me, very distinguished, and he says, "Where are you from?" I said, "I'm from United States." And I said, "Come on in." I went into the Millionaire Club. The doorman let me in, and then all of a sudden, I didn't realize I was speaking to Stringfellow, who's Stringfellow today. What a great guy. What a great guy. Then I met people like from the Sulphur Jets, Mike Sweeney from the Sulphur Jets. And, Manchester became, I guess not my last stop, but it became an avenue for me for playing my music. You know something, I've been talking about Simply Me. I want to tell you about the people I've met here. I mean, good musicians, cracking musicians. A friend of mine had the silver screen in Eccles, and he sold it to some other friends of mine. And he opened a place in Wigan called the Boulevard. And he said, "Jerome, come over and play." So I'm going back 20 years, 23 years or more. So I started playing in the afternoons there. People were shopping, and I was busking, not on the street, but inside. Had a little stage there, and I started playing. And it was packed every Saturday. And there used to be some bikers up in the corner. And they used to come there, no problem. They were straight dudes and ladies, and they had their own little corner. Never give any hassle or anything like that. And one of the bikers came up to me and said, "Man, we like you. We've been watching you for a while now." I said, "Thank you very much." And that's why I was drinking my brandies then. And he said, "You see that lad there?" I said, "They mean the lad sitting at the table?" He said, "Yeah." He says, "He plays guitar." So one Saturday afternoon, I was on my brandies. I don't drink anymore, and not because of any doctor thing. I just stopped because I had enough. But make a long story short, I was on my brandies, and I looked down at this gentleman, and I said, "You play guitar?" And he looked at me, and he said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, get your white ass up and go on and get your guitar." And he's been with me for about 19 years. His name is Max Vitale. Great player. Actually, he loved Miles Davis. He loved Miles Davis. He's doing fusion music with his band. Cracking musician. Not only that, cracking oil painter, cracking graphic artist. I mean, he had a day gig and still do a night gig. But he started playing with me, and he knew how unorthodox I was. And we started playing the Bolton in the Beer Fest, at the Bolton Beer Fest, with Clive Nightingale, who became a friend of mine, and he's gone off now. But Max has been really right there with me. And somebody said to Max one day, he says, "How can you blooming play with Jerome? He's so unorthodox." So Max said, "Well, I can play with him because, one, if he does Fly Me to the Moon 100 times, he does it 100 times different." So that probably shut the other musician up, although that musician probably was a good musician, And I praise Max for that, because if I do a song twice, I won't do it twice the same way. And it shouldn't be, It shouldn't be.
There ain't nothing gonna harm you. Let your mommy and daddy standing by.
And one day we were playing, and this lad was sitting out there, and he knew. I said, he came with his father one day, and he was sitting on the side there, and introduced himself. Said his name was Paul. His name was Paul, and And his dad was, he used to bring his dad. Every time we played the beer fest, he used to bring his dad, bring his dad down. And they sit there, and he eat. Said he liked it, people wanted to play. I said, well, bring it one time. Bring your guitar down one time, And then I found out Max and knew this Paul, the lad who's filming this here, today. But he's a character. He's got his guitar behind me. It's not humming anymore. And he loved playing the blues. Paul loved playing the blues. And he got on stage with Max and I at one time, and he played well. He knows, he has the idea this is the way it should be, and he knows about the blues, and he plays it. He plays it.
Let the good time roll. Let the good times roll. Let the good time roll. We love you. Don't forget tomorrow night. I don't know who got here tomorrow night. You got me, you got Max, and you got Paul tonight. If you don't like it, if you didn't like it, I don't give a shit. I really don't give a shit. Just be happy, because you're too ugly to understand that anyway. Look at that. Yo, look at you. Ow, ow, ow. Let the good time roll. Let the good time roll all night long. Let the good time roll. Let the good time roll. We want to thank you here for the Boys and Girls Clubs, the Boys and Ladies, the Young Men and Young Ladies Club of Bolton, and the charity, and the beer tent, and the wine, the Bangkok Brewery, and all you people from the businesses here that you gave money here, Clive Nightingale, the whole everybody here. Get pissed, get home safe. Do not stop at the door. Don't stop in the streets because the fucking car will hit you. It will hit you right in your ass, boy. Good night, ladies. Go on, get on, quick. Go on, move. Well, good night. God bless. I'll see you in heaven. My baby got me do what you want.